Valve and Steam have potentially just changed the game when it comes to console and handheld gaming. Valve being the guys behind Steam, the biggest PC gaming platform on the PC, which I know not a lot of you guys may be super familiar with or aware of, but Valve last week announced their Steam Deck, not to be confused at all with Elgato's Stream Deck, which is a completely different thing that also got announced last week as well. The Steam Deck is a new handheld gaming system that Valve is launching in December of 2021, set to compete not only directly with the Nintendo Switch and I guess kind of the Vita as well, but also the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One, offering essentially PC quality or PS5 quality experiences on a handheld console. We're yet to determine exactly how good it actually is or how good the quality of it is, but I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the features of this and some of my thoughts on this console as well, and whether or not this could potentially be the PlayStation Vita 2 that all of us PlayStation gamers have been wanting. So as I said, the Steam Deck is launching in December of 2021. We don't have an exact date or time yet, but they're taking pre-order reservations for this at the moment. We're not going to talk too much about the specifics of the hardware, but we do know that there is a custom AMD APU, and the GPU is a Zen 2, which has a 2.5 to 3.5 hertz range. I'm not a massive guy on tech specs and hardware, so I'm not the best person to ask on whether or not this is good or bad, or how it stacks up next to the PlayStation 5, and I'm not going to try and attempt to talk about that in this video. I'm more going to talk about the implications of what this is for the broader industry. Competing directly with the Switch, this thing has a touchscreen as well as two sort of touchpad buttons to act as almost a mouse cursor as well as your analog sticks. It has all these standard controls that a Switch would have with analog sticks, rear triggers and the like, as well as even programmable buttons at the very back of the console, very similar to the Pro controllers that Xbox has or that the SCUF controllers have. It's going to come out in three different models, the lowest model being a 64 gig, which is going to cost around $399 at launch, and the biggest model being a 520 gigabyte model, which is going to cost $649 at launch. So it is not cheap. It's definitely a lot more expensive than a Nintendo Switch, and it's coming to that price point where it's creeping in between the PlayStation 5's low-end model and high-end model. Now, while this is a Valve machine and is going to be playing Steam and running Steam OS, it's not necessarily a PC. But it also kind of is. Now, the console itself isn't upgradable. When you purchase the console, that is the unit that you get. You don't get any upgrades or potential upgrades to mix and match things, which I know a lot of PC gamers like to do. So in that sense, it feels more like a traditional handheld or a gaming console. It does have the ability to add memory cards or SD cards to create expandable memory, so you can increase the storage capacity of your device that way. The weird part about it is that it's running a form of SteamOS running on the Linux operating system. But you can install Windows on this as well, which means that you can fully customize your interface and how it looks and runs, which makes it very different to a PlayStation 5 or a Nintendo Switch in that sense. So it sits in this weird middle ground where you've got this high level of customization, basically being able to install Windows on this thing and run a full PC setup. If you wanted to run Microsoft Word, I assume that would work on it too. But then you don't have the hardware customization that PC gamers are used to. So it sits in the space of kind of being a PC, but also kind of just being a traditional gaming console as well, with more customization options. Now, so far we've seen a couple of different games running on this, but two notable games that I want to talk about, because I do think they're probably a little bit more hardware intensive, is Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which is the PlayStation 4 game that came out in 2019. Really cool third-person action adventure game, but definitely no slouch. It's a game that I imagine would be reasonably hardware intensive to run if you're running it on any device, whether it's a PS4 or a PS5. The game is available on both PS4, PS5, and now this as well. So that is kind of impressive, and it looks good running on this. It is important to keep in mind it is running on a smaller screen. You're not running it on a 32-inch or a 50-inch screen. It's a very tiny screen in comparison. So games are going to naturally look better on this tiny screen, even if the resolution is not as high, just because it's smaller. It's the same way that games on the Vita or the PSP look exceptionally good, and then when you blow them up even further, they don't necessarily look as good. The other game that we've seen running on this is Control, which again is a game that we've seen on PS4 and PS5 running natively, and seeing it on a handheld console like this is definitely intriguing. Now, it is important to note Control is available on the Nintendo Switch, but only via streaming services, so it isn't running natively on the Switch hardware, and I don't think the Nintendo Switch actually could run Control if it wanted to. I think it needs that extra processing power running through their streaming service to allow it to actually run that game. So having it run natively on a handheld like this is honestly quite impressive. Control famously didn't run very well on the PlayStation 4 even when it launched, because it was quite intensive. Or maybe the developers just didn't optimize it. I don't know. So with games like this running on a device that isn't hardwired into your mains, what's the battery gonna be like? A lot of you guys have probably got a Nintendo Switch and you experience battery challenges with that as well. I know my Switch goes flat after only a few hours of playing a really simple game like Animal Crossing on it. So what would the battery on this be like? Steam are being super cagey about this one aspect, and I think this is where the downfall of this console starts to creep in a little bit. They're saying anywhere between 2 to 8 hours of battery depending on how heavy the processing power is that's required. 8 hours being if it's sitting in standby and barely anything is happening, and 2 hours maybe if you're running a game at 30 frames or 60 frames per second on the highest resolution settings. Which is where I think things start to fall off slightly, because the battery is super important. If you can't get a decent gaming session in with one of these things, it's really not of any use to anybody. This is going to be something we'll know more about when more hands-on experiences happen with this device and as we get closer to launch, but I think the battery is a big one for us to watch out for, because I think it really is going to be the make or break of whether this device is actually the future we're wanting, or if this is more just a tech demo of a future that we don't quite have yet because batteries aren't good enough. The other thing is the button placement. Obviously, all of us gamers on the PlayStation are used to a very traditional button placement on a controller like so. But the Steam Deck has quite a different button placement, which actually resembles a lot more closely, I would say, the Wii U touchpad than any other gaming controller I've ever seen in the past, with all of its buttons being very top heavy and kind of feeling very square shaped. I don't know about you, but the gamepad didn't feel super ergonomic to me. I didn't really enjoy playing with the gamepad, and I even have trouble playing with my Nintendo Switch sometimes because it just feels too square. So I am a bit skeptical about how the button placement on this looks, as well as the ergonomics of actually holding this device. But apparently, according to people who have had hands-on with this, which isn't me because I'm not important enough, it does feel quite good to hold and play. So the jury is still out on whether or not the button placement is good or bad, and we'll know more about that, obviously, again, as more previews come out and if it does actually just make sense. I guess the thing that probably has me the most concerned is about Steam and Valve themselves. These guys aren't new to creating a new piece of hardware or a new device on the market. They have created so many different things between the Steam controller, the Steam box, the Steam machine. There are so many different ventures they have made into both console gaming, using a controller over a mouse and keyboard, trying to make games more accessible to a larger and broader audience, and they've all ended up being failures to a degree. I personally had a Steam machine and the Steam controller, and they both kind of just sucked. They didn't really provide that console level experience because there was a bunch of PC confusion and complications included in there, and the controller itself was just uncomfortable to hold and use. And while I trust that they have improved things for this device, I still remember my bad experience with one of their previous devices and how they dropped support for it almost immediately. So whether or not they actually do stick to their guns on this one and do dig their heels in and dive a little bit deeper into making this the next handheld experience for gamers is yet to be seen, or whether or not Nintendo is still going to run strong with the Nintendo Switch. Now, the question I've been having is, should I still buy a Nintendo Switch? And is it still worth buying? And I think it is at this point. Nintendo still has a library of games that are just exclusive to the Switch. And the Switch itself is also just a brilliant console to have as a supplementary console to a PS4 or a PS5. Not only can you play it on the TV, you can also play it on the go, you can play it with a friend, and the Joy-Cons allow you to play co-op basically anywhere with anyone at any time. The console itself also just has a bunch of exclusives to it that you'll never be able to play anywhere else, and I think for those exclusives alone, the Switch's buy-in is absolutely worth it for the price. The Switch is also significantly cheaper now with discounts and cheaper models currently available, which make it more accessible to pick up than the Steam Deck, which is going to be closer to the PlayStation 5's top-end price point when it launches in December. So the jury's still out on whether or not this is going to be the next big thing. Sadly, we're already seeing scalpers jump on the bandwagon of trying to scalp this device, and we're already seeing scalped prices online for this thing just jump the same as the PlayStation 5. It's gone really crazy the way gaming consoles and manufacturers just can't produce enough to meet demand, and scalpers are just running rampant again 6 months out from this device launching. It's really frustrating and a shame as a gamer, because it means realistically you probably won't be able to pick this up for a decent couple of months. I want to know everyone's thoughts about this thing in the comments down below. Do you see the future that Valve sees? Do you think there is potential in a device like this, or do you think they're dreaming? Are you guys interested in picking something like this up, and would you consider this over a PS5, or would you still prefer to have a PS5 as your mainline console? Curious to get everyone's thoughts in the comments down below. Don't forget to leave a like if you haven't already left one, and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed. I look forward to seeing all of you in the comment section down below. Hey Patreons for this month, thank you so very much for helping to support the channel and keep the lights on. Patrons will be seeing their names showing up here next to me right now. Thank you to every single one of you, and also YouTube channel members as well. If you want to become a member of the YouTube channel, you can hit the join button down below. Not only do you get your name featured here at the end of every video, but you will also get exclusive emotes to you in my comment section and chat as well, and a badge next to your name showing you are a legend. Likewise, if you want to join the Patreon, link in the description down below. Thank you, each and every one of you, so very much.